Happy Monday, everyone. If you're watching live and for those watching the replay, I hope you're having an amazing day. Thanks for joining us for today's live Q&A. We're actually going to answer some of your guys' most frequently asked questions. So we put up a post on social media. We asked you to share your questions that you really want us to answer. We compiled some of those, and if we have time, we're going to answer some live as well. I'll be joined by Kimberley Quirk, a lead practitioner here at Mast Cell 360. And if you're new to our community, drop in the comments, where are you tuning in from? For those who may not know me, I'm Jamie Fries-Miller. I'm one of the health coaches here at Mast Cell 360, and it's our pleasure to host you guys today. Before we get going, I just have some quick disclaimers. This presentation is for informational and educational purposes. It's not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness, so please be sure to discuss any recommendations that we share today with your healthcare provider. Some of the links that we share during this presentation or on our website are affiliate links, which means that Mast Cell 360 may take a very small commission if you purchase through us. We only recommend products that we love and use personally or use in the Mast Cell 360 clinic. And if you use our links, it helps to promote the free resources that we have, including this live show and our blog. All right, so like I said, we are going to be answering your questions today. I'm going to be bringing Kimberley up to the stage now. Hi, Kimberley.
Hello.
All right, do you have any welcoming messages to our audience?
Yeah, just happy to see everybody here. It sounds like spring there, Jamie, and I love listening to that bird.
Yeah. I hope you guys can hear that. I actually thought about that before. I was like, oh, should I wait to open the windows or open them now? But it's really nice here today in Maryland, so figured everyone can enjoy a little bird song through my screen.
It sounds like spring.
Yeah. All right, and today is my son's 6th birthday, so like I'm in a really good mood because it's like the day I became a mom, and spring, everything just feels like alive today. All right. Yeah, no one's writing in. I haven't seen any comments, guys. Let us know where you're tuning in from and if you can hear the bird song where you are. All right, let's get going with our first question while we wait for people to join. All right, what tests are best to diagnose MCAS?
So this is kind of a big question, right? So tests to diagnose MCAS. So if you are going for a diagnosis, usually what a licensed practitioner would do, right, if you need a diagnosis, would be to look at your history and kind of look at your symptoms. And you need to have symptoms across more than one, symptoms across systems. Yeah. So at least 2 systems, right? So, for example, skin and neuro symptoms, or it could be gut and neuro symptoms, those kinds of things. So
respiratory and gut.
Yes, exactly. So having more than symptoms in more than one system is sort of the other thing they like to do is usually put you on, try some antihistamines and things like that might be over the counter to see how you do with them and how you respond. If you respond well to that, that's usually like kind of a flag that there might be some mast cell going on. Mm-hmm. And then how do they test? So you have blood tests, you have urine tests. So blood tests, what they typically run are histamine and tryptase. I'll tell you, they ran my histamine and it came down actually really low because I was on antihistamines. At the time I was in a flare and did not want to go off of them. So my histamine was low. So it didn't really tell much. Tryptase is more, it's kind of controversial in how they look at that, but it's usually more of a marker if that's elevated for possible mastocytosis. And then they would go into, if there's suspected mastocytosis, more invasive kinds of tests. The other test would be that urine test. So that would be a 24-hour urine test to look at all the mast cell mediators that are released over a day. So some things to know about that test are that sometimes I don't often see it come back positive. You need to keep that test refrigerated. So over a 24-hour period, you have a giant jug. You urinate, every time you urinate, you're adding to the jug, and you need to keep that in their fridge because those mediators don't hang around for a long time. So that needs to be sort of preserved. I will say it's hard to get that test right, because even if you did a really good job of keeping it, cool and cold enough, bringing it then to the lab, because the lab had the facility to do that. And I've found through clients and through myself, they made me sit there for a while with my jug, right, in the lab waiting to give it. And then I wasn't in a flare at the time, but also the lab, if they aren't set up to do these tests and they're not familiar with this test, they're not going to refrigerate it, and it might be sitting around and not be a positive test. So what is that test looking for? It's looking for, elevated histamine, elevated leukotrienes, elevated prostaglandins, and all the things that the mast cells release. So I will tell you, I consider myself sort of a mast cell poster child. I had all the skin issues, so there was something visible to see. Plus I had neuro symptoms, had some gut symptoms, and I could not get that diagnosis. I could not get the test right. Yeah. However, did I need a diagnosis to get better? No, I did not. Mm-hmm. The hives that I had helped me get the meds that did help me temporarily with some of the symptoms. Those are something that I'm not on anymore. So trying to think about, do you need that diagnosis or that to get the meds? And sometimes you don't need that to get to the underlying root cause, because our whole goal here is to get at the root cause of it and have it not be something that you're dealing with anymore.
Yeah, I never even tried to get an official diagnosis. I've shared this story on a past live, I think, where my doctor said, go home, try a low histamine diet and antihistamine and see if you feel better. Because I did have symptoms in multiple systems. I had the gut, I had the neuro, I had the respiratory. I didn't have the traditional hives or anaphylaxis that a lot of doctors are looking for. And similarly, I, in my research, found Mast Cell 360 symptom survey. So for those of you who are new and are like, do I maybe even have MCAS, or do I just have histamine intolerance? We have a symptom survey, and you can go on that, and it's yes, check. So I similarly to you, Kimberly, was I'm a poster child for MCAS. Never felt the need to go get that official diagnosis. And because sometimes it's mindset too. It's don't let, a label define you too. It's let's just have the goal of getting well.
Right. The only way I see as a gate is if you really need those meds to stabilize some things.
Yeah. And for sometimes insurance reasons, for insurance to cover certain things. But I think, unfortunately, the statistic is something like only 10% of cases are actually diagnosed through the traditional testing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I don't even, consider mast cell a life kind of thing. I mean, I know I've had it. I know that I could flare, but it's not a part of my daily concerns.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Let's jump into the next one. All right. What kind of doctors or practitioners help with MCAS, and how do I find one?
Generally, right. So if you're looking for that diagnosis and you're looking for some meds that maybe going to support you while you're working on your root cause, the types of doctors that I've seen the most helpful have been sort of allergy immunology for getting those meds or that diagnosis or that testing done. So generally, and how do you find one? To find one like that, referrals I know have been the best for me, and it's been through other people going through the same thing in groups, who might say, hey, I saw this doctor and he was really compassionate and he was really understanding and helped me get some of the testing that I needed to get done or the meds that I needed. And then, in terms of practitioner, I mean, at Mast Cell 360, this is what we do. We help people get at the root cause of it. So yeah.
Yeah. So we if you're kind of looking for where to get going, how to get started, our strategy sessions would be a great place to see okay, do I have MCAS? Do I have, Mast Cell Activation Syndrome? What do I need support with right now? Where am I in this journey? Do you know your root causes? Do you not know your root causes? Those are kind of the things that we really, as practitioners that specialize in Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, help. I tell people we're the other set of eyes to help you connect those dots, because sometimes you're so in it that it's really hard to see the big picture sometimes, or maybe there's something you haven't thought about, what an possible environmental trigger. And then like Kimberly and I were both saying earlier, like MCAS presents itself so differently from person to person. And so it's really hard to find a practitioner who specializes in all of the things that may be like driving the MCAS symptoms. So we really look at it as big picture and can support you in finding those root causes. What is the best way to prevent high histamine levels what is the best way to prevent high histamine levels or to lower those histamine levels? Great question.
Yeah. So we have a lot of content on this. So I want to send people to the website for that, for more details. But generally what we're looking at is take away those triggers, right? So figuring out what your triggers are. And if you haven't looked at mold, that's the biggest trigger we see across everyone. So taking away getting out of mold, right? Or checking your environment, checking yourself for mold. Low histamine diet, huge, right? So if you haven't tried the low histamine diet, I would recommend trying that for a good 6 to 8 weeks to see if that makes a difference for you. I will tell you, when I was so reactive with mast cell that it was more environmental, I couldn't tell with the low histamine diet until after I got out of mold. So the low, that stabilizing those mast cells is huge, right? So either trying some of those mast cell supports that we've talked about. That can be supplements. Those can be over-the-counter meds. Those can be prescription meds, So those are ways we can kind of stabilize, because those mast cells will keep releasing histamine if they're destabilized. And other ways to do it would be like a supplement like DAO would be a way to sort of break down, because often what's happening is we have a lot of histamine going on. And if our gut is kind of compromised, we might not have those brush border enzymes like DAO, enough of them to break it down. So DAO is a supplement that we onboard pretty quickly in the clinic to help people with breaking down that histamine load.
Yeah, I remember when I started a low histamine diet, I'm pretty sure I used our list to get going when I first found out. And I like went full in for 6 weeks. Like I read the list and I was like, okay, I'm going to eat low histamine food, but I'm also going to prepare my meat in this way from frozen. And I'm going to immediately freeze my leftovers. And so I did that for 6 weeks. And I realized afterwards that I had been living with low-grade headaches every single day. And it wasn't until I did a low histamine diet that I realized that that was like a true symptom for me. So if you're just getting started and you're not eating low histamine, you're trying to like do some of those other pieces like the over-the-counter just antihistamines, I highly recommend checking out, we have a printable shopping list. I think it's mastcell360.com. The link is down there /printable. And that, you can take the grocery store and be like, okay, these ideally are safe foods. Of course, work with a knowledgeable practitioner to understand like what foods do and do not work for you, because there's no one diet that fits everyone. But what we're looking for is, in part of that stabilization, is just lowering that histamine load down so that your mast cells aren't as, on firing on all squads. Like they're just not as reactive, because we've removed some of the triggers, which may be food related. And then like Kimberly said, it's really that stabilization. It's like the diet piece, the mast cell stabilizing piece, and removing those other triggers like the mold.
Yep. And the nervous system piece would play into that too, because if you're, nervous about a lot of things and just have a lot of dysregulation in your nervous system, that's just going to upregulate your system, and you're going to produce more histamine. So trying to get things quieted down there for sure.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Is it better to take one high dose of one antihistamine or lower doses of a few?
So that really depends on who you are and what you tolerate, right? I was somebody who everybody's like, tried Zyrtec, huge headaches, right? Huge headaches. I'm like, okay, how can I be allergic to an allergy medicine? But tried Allegra, did fine with Allegra. So I was able to high dose Allegra daily for a while. So that's what I was able to do. There's other people who don't tolerate higher amounts. So maybe they're doing lower doses. So it really depends on who you are and what you tolerate.
Yeah. I actually don't think I didn't want to do the antihistamines because I felt like when that was the suggestion, it was like, do a low histamine diet and take an antihistamine. And I didn't really want to do that part because I was like, well, that doesn't solve, that wasn't getting to the root for me. But then I, came to Mast Cell 360 and was like, all right, well, let's try this one. Like, let's try Perilla or like some of the other, or quercetin, some of those other mast cell stabilizing supplements rather than the over the counter. I know it's like people have preferences too. Like some of those over the counter ones have dyes in them. You want to find, that could be a mast cell trigger. So we want to find the ones that support you as an individual. And I think in clinic, we see it more so like a couple getting a few layered on approach. We talk a lot about that in the mast cell top 8 supplement course. So that's linked. You can see the link below, mastcell360.com/master-class. We go into a lot more detail on kind of what are some of the antihistamines that your provider may not know about. How do you onboard them slowly and safely? And like, can you onboard a second one before you get to full dose of a full one? So the course is really great in going into the detail there.
And I'll tell you, I was on all of them. I was on all the herbs. I was on at least 5 or 6 different prescriptions, injectables.
Yeah.
And my immune system was still screaming about the mold in my house. So
yeah. Okay. Great follow-up question to that. What fillers or ingredients are histamine triggers?
So yeah, let me look at my list here. So titanium dioxide, and I think we're going to give a link, right, to people.
Yeah. So on this blog post, mastcell360.com/antihistamine, it's a blog post on antihistamines, but it has the list that Kimberly is going to go over will be on that blog post for you guys. And it's also in the top 8 course if you are interested in going further into it.
Okay. So yeah, titanium dioxide is something that's pretty common. That could be a mast cell trigger. Potassium sorbate, also a mast cell trigger. Sodium benzoate, another mast cell trigger. And these are things that are commonly in a lot of meds. Xanthan gum, which is common in food. It's made from fermentation. Carrageenan, which is a common, filler in many foods. Is a mast cell trigger. Citric acid comes from fermentation, so it can, cause some histamine response there. Sodium triphosphate is a mast cell trigger. Potassium triphosphate, another mast cell trigger. Talc, 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 like talcum powder. Collagen, just because it's high histamine. So I know when I was trying to be really healthy, right, I was doing bone broth and collagen and all these things, right, and they were all high histamine. So yeah, collagen tends to be high histamine. Citrates, so anything that says citrate in it, sometimes people are coming and using magnesium citrate or some other citrates that are in their supplements, and those are coming from fermentation, and sort of taking those out can kind of allow things to kind of calm down. Citrus oils can be histamine liberators, especially if you're taking them internally. Clove and cinnamon are very much histamine liberators. Dried spinach, strawberry, and pineapple, right? Those are some of the foods that are like the highest histamine foods that are natural foods. Niacin comes from fermentation. Ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C. A lot of people don't realize their vitamin C comes from fermentation. So that can be one that causes flares. And ascorbyl palmitate is another that you typically can find in supplements and things like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. If binders just bind to things in your gut, how do you detox mold from the rest of your body?
So yeah. So, there's different things that we do, right? Like sauna and trying to sweat, because that's going to help you at the cellular level.
Mm-hmm.
Losing weight, if you've gained a lot of weight, and not doing it fast is important, because when you lose weight, you're releasing a lot from those cells. The other thing is antifungals. So there can be things that are colonized, sinuses, gut, and other places. And we use antifungals to kind of get at that, both either herbally or people talk to the doctors about getting a prescription for some antifungals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've detoxed mold and my test is clear, but I still have symptoms like fatigue, sensitivities, neuropathy, and more. How do I finish healing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so if your test is clear and it's the test that we talk about, we prefer the real-time lab because it's one of the more sensitive. Because I have had people come in and they're like, oh, my test is blank, but it's maybe a vibrant test. And then we run a real-time lab and it shows up. So making sure, you're testing on maybe real-time lab just to make sure that that's really clear. But sometimes, detoxing the mold, and if we've been for a while without foods, had food sensitivities, there's lots of nutrient deficiencies that happen. And it's kind of like the rebuilding of the body afterwards. So, fatigue, that very much sounds like a mitochondrial issue, right? So there might be something to look at there. Sensitivities, maybe we didn't do the nervous system work. There might be things upregulated, or there could be some SIBO still hanging around. And then it's so much easier to detox that or deal with that with herbals after you have detoxed that mold, if that's truly gone. Neuropathy, that can be so many things, right? That could be insulin resistance, that could be vitamin C deficiency, that can be so many things. So we kind of troubleshoot that in the clinic. So how do you finish healing? I would recommend working with a practitioner one-on-one to kind of rebuild and do that testing that's going to really look at that. There would be different kinds of tests, nutritional tests and organic acids tests and things like that can kind of start to look at some of those things that you get all your supports and you're rebuilding and feeling better.
Yeah.
What are the layers that are left? Because it is like an onion. We're getting at all those layers. But yeah, you're a little bit depleted after detox.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely those deficiencies from like the gut being destroyed. It's like, okay, we were so limited on food. We have to rebuild, like Kimberly said. That kind of, in our order of operations, our Mast Cell 360 method, it's stabilize, detox, and then those advanced supports. So looking at those co-infections from tick-borne illnesses, SIBO, Candida, that are much easier to do once that mold's removed. So like, congratulations if that real-time lab test comes back. I'm like due for one next week, so I'm like excited and also nervous for a repeat test. But yeah, it's great that, if that's truly you've detoxed the mold, that's amazing, because now you're going to be able to do those advanced supports to kind of, do finish the healing, and then the rebuilding, and then the optimization, and put together a maintenance plan for yourself.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Some of those infections can be hanging around still afterwards, right? Like if you came in with Lyme and that, you still had that kind of fatigue, it's worth looking at and then doing some protocols to address that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We find that mold is like often like 95 to 99% of people who come in have that mold piece. And it is like a block in the healing of those other things. But often someone's gone and worked with another practitioner and they're like, oh, I've done the Lyme piece, but it keeps coming back. And so until that mold piece is gone, it's harder to heal from some of those other pieces.
Absolutely. It's just like if you have the fungal colonization and it's dripping down and we just keep getting SIBO, of course, because it keeps getting reseeded. So yeah, really, really working on those pieces afterwards to rebuild and shake all the rest of the issues away. Yeah, it's so much easier on the other side of it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys, we definitely have time for some live Q&As. So if you haven't submitted a question yet, I do see some coming in. Please only submit your question one time. Please only ask questions that we can kind of generalize so that everyone can learn from. We're unable to answer those personal in-depth health questions. So we do appreciate you guys understanding that this is, generally speaking today, and again, for educational and informational purposes. So, if you do have a specific health case, you really do need to be working with a provider to get to the root cause of your own healing. All right. Let's see. Start here. All right. Rita's asking, can you have histamine intolerance but not have MCAS? That's a great question.
Yeah, you can. There's lots of people who have that, or who have both, or who have one or the other, because there's some people who have mast cell who don't have the histamine intolerance. But yes, it is possible. Probably way easier to move forward if you don't have the mast cell piece, which is like more upregulated, more sensitive, and a lot more reactions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like to remind people with the histamine intolerance piece that like sometimes it's not just the foods coming in too. It's just like if your gut's disrupted, then you really need to support the gut, because digesting food in itself produces histamine. So that's like where the DAO can come in, or the digestive enzyme piece can come in to really support that piece as well. But yeah, going back to that low histamine food list is a great place to start. Okay. Melissa's asking, can taking steroids make MCAS worse?
So I don't make it worse. I mean, some people take it to improve because it calms down the inflammation piece. I was on prednisone for 3 years, so I like to share that with people. And so I need to stay on the prednisone to keep that inflammation lower. So for me, it worked. And for some people, they have symptoms taking steroids, right? So it can make those symptoms worse. And going off of it, that rebound effect can be really, really rough. So I don't know if it would necessarily make the mast cell worse, but it might be the change if you're going off of it, or the change going on it, giving you some symptoms that you don't like.
Okay. Julian is asking, okay, no signs of mold here. We would argue that, you really want to make sure that there's no signs. So not all mold is visible. Some of them, like anywhere with indoor plumbing, has the potential for mold. So we do often tell clients, especially in those strategy sessions or those first roadmap appointments, we're evaluating the environment for triggers. So truly make sure that there is no signs of mold, even if it's not visible. So test your body, test your home. When you can only tolerate 4 foods, you're reacting to medications. What can you do if you're not tolerating meds and supplements? Kimberly, I'll throw that over to you. And if you want to say anything about the mold piece.
I think it's really important if you haven't tested, to test and not go off of what you see. I will tell you, in my own house, there was no major water event. It wasn't visible at all. Had 3 experts through who could not see a thing, but my body would tell me otherwise, and I had to find that. So make sure you're testing your body and your house. 2 things. So if you haven't done that, I would do that, because I have seen that keep people stuck. The other piece of that is, it definitely sounds like some nervous system dysregulation going on. Yeah. So I would start with the nervous system piece. If you're not tolerating foods and supplements and things like that, working on calming that. I almost see it like there's 2 dials that we're working with, where we're trying to dial down our own internal response to triggers, right? Is the nervous system work. And then, we're trying to dial down any exposure to mold and things like that might be causing nervous system dysregulation and immune dysregulation.
Yeah, and that nervous system piece, we've talked about it on so many lives before, but we do have a masterclass on that as well. So if you're not really sure what we mean by nervous system, I would definitely start by going through that, because the course lays out exactly why that piece is so important for kind of calming down the mast cells to being so reactive to the things that would be supportive otherwise, like the meds and the supplements, because, mast cells, being part of our immune system, are guarding your body and constantly searching for like those environmental triggers that are like seen as dangerous, because they want to protect you. And so a new supplement, when your mast cells and your nervous system are upregulated, are going to be seen as dangerous. And so what we need to do is calm the mast cells down, but also retrain the brain, retrain the mast cells to be less like reactive. And Kimberly uses the Trojan horse method. Like we sneak it in, like we can, once we kind of get some of that nervous system piece on board, and then we can start introducing those meds and supplements in a way that is going to allow our body to continue to feel safe. And that's the part of the nervous system, is going back to this idea of safety at all times. does your body feel safe?
I was going to add that mast cell is all about to turn that down is really getting back to safety in your body.
Yeah.
So how can you get back to safety in your body is cleaning up that environment and cleaning up the internal environment too. And some of us, if we've had any kind of childhood trauma, it can play into that. And, you know, I wasn't somebody who had capital T trauma, but just having mast cell and trying to get diagnosed and not knowing why you're sick and people not understanding is a trauma itself. Yeah, that you don't realize, or the way that people treat you and when you're sick and it's not always visible is a trauma.
Even on the nervous system level, like, you know, I remind people that in utero, the central nervous system is one of the first things to physically develop. You know, your spinal cord, everyone talks about the spinal cord developing, right? That's where the vagus nerve runs. And so it's one of the first things that develops in utero. So from the moment of conception all the way to the present moment here today, your nervous system is holding on to both conscious and unconscious memories. So something could have happened during your mom's pregnancy with you that you never learned about consciously. She never shared that information with you, but your body is storing that memory. And so when we work on the nervous system, we're able to process and release things that we may be holding on to that we are not even conscious of. Okay. Lita's asking, is there an antihistamine that doesn't have dyes or other filler ingredients?
So generally in clinic, if somebody has a lot of sensitivities to fillers and dyes, we're telling them to talk to their doctor about getting compounded medicine. Mm-hmm. So generally it's looking at that if you are sensitive to dyes and fillers and things like that, just because the over-the-counter stuff just really mostly does have that.
Yeah. Okay.
And that you know, somebody like that, if you do okay with onboarding herbal supplements, you know, that's probably where I would start. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Don't antihistamines only divert histamine to other types of receptors in the body, i.e. H3 or H4, since antihistamines don't actually break down histamine?
So yeah, it's blocking that histamine receptor is what it's doing. H2 blocks it in the gut, which is like your Pepsid. H1 is more systemic. Depends on which H1 you're using. So yeah, it doesn't break down the histamine. I mean, you do need DAO to break down the histamine, and you want to reduce that histamine, but it can help symptoms temporarily. And you know, I see these as sort of, it's almost like we're trying to just stabilize, right? And keep things calm so that you're able to onboard more. So it's not having to do antihistamines for life. I mean, I used to take 4 Allegra a day. I take 0.
Yeah.
You know, that's the goal, right? To get at that root cause.
Yeah, I might take one before I eat crabs, but I'm also taking DAO and I'm also taking digestive enzymes. Like, all right. Okay. Lindsay is saying, I was in New York City during 9/11 and haven't been the same since. We're so sorry. Years after, I had a rash breakout after eating peanuts. Now I present as a very seasonally allergic person yet. I've tried antihistamines, quercetin, etc. I've gotten things under better control with methylfolate, but still reactive. Any suggestions? So this is a little bit more personalized, but in generally speaking, Kimberly, can you answer this question?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with the nervous system piece, and maybe even working with a therapist who can kind of work through that trauma piece as well, because it sounds like it unlocks some things for you. But that's where I would start, is that nervous system piece, and you know, maybe checking out our nervous system course, because there might be a lot of resources there to start to calm that down. But that's where I would start. Yeah. And then checking for mold, right? Yeah.
Okay. Carl's saying, I started cleaning out my basement last week. It's very dirty, dusty, but not damp. Wore a mask and gloves. I should have had more protection though. I started reacting that night, didn't feel well. Yeah. It was a couple nights later, anxiety, flare, heart palpitations, congestion, pain in lungs, including fatigue and brain fog. Is there anything I can do to speed up the healing process? Yeah. So again, more personalized, but generally speaking,
yeah. I mean, so yeah, prevention.
Yeah.
And I've done this myself, Carl. So I get it. I've made myself flare by doing
I was going to say, this is an acute exposure. So like we can answer this generally speaking, like, okay, you've had a known acute exposure. How do we calm that down? So we do have a blog post on how to put together your own personal flare plan, but I'll let Kimberly,
Yeah. So we're obviously not going back and doing that and being more careful in the future. I do recommend showering after you do such a thing too, besides all the protection and things like that if you're sensitive, because it does sound like there could be old spores and mycotoxins from the past there, right? It might not be wet now, but how can we kind of calm that response down? So there's lots you can do, like going back to your flare plan where it might be different antihistamines that you tolerate or supplements that you tolerate that calm the mast cells down. Hydration is going to be huge. Giving yourself a lot of self-compassion, right? And resting more and just realizing, yeah, you're in a flare and it might take a little bit to get past. Nervous system work can help too.
Yeah, like the general, more sleep, more nervous system, more hydration.
Absolutely. Yeah, to kind of bring that down. I also like baking soda and water. So not near food, but taking like say a quarter teaspoon of baking soda and 4 to 6 ounces of water and drinking that can really kind of calm down. It's like a really basic mast cell support. And people do that, maybe 2-3 times a day. You just don't want to do it near your meals, so it lowers your stomach acid if you're trying to digest proteins. But you could do it in between meals to kind of calm things down. It just kind of calms down that inflammatory cascade a little bit.
Okay. Lisa's tuning in from the UK. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a little bit later there. Do you have to take prescription compounded antifungal spray along with things like silver, grapefruit seed extract? Impossible to get compounded. Are silver and grapefruit seed extract alone enough? So we did have Dr. Dennis on last week to talk about some of the sinus normalization. So Lisa, if you haven't seen that one, you may be really interested in that interview.
Yeah, and it depends on who you are and what your symptoms are. I didn't need to do prescription sinus. I just didn't. I didn't have a lot of symptoms there. And I do like the nanoparticle silver, I want to say, and grapefruit seed extract or the citra drops. I know that Dr. Dennis sells are really great if you have a mild, but some people have some severe things going on or things just keep reoccurring. That's when you really need to look at the prescription stuff.
Yeah. Okay, Kendra's asking any suggestions for MCAS cough or shortness of breath. Cough usually happens at 1 or 2 in the morning or 5 or 6 a.m. Wakes up with a lot of phlegm.
Yeah, so this feels really specific, but it depends on what's causing it. I mean, trying some of those antihistamines and things like that can help. Yeah, I can't really give specific support, but if you haven't looked at mold, look at mold. For sure. That can cause that cough piece, the shortness of breath, but it could be past exposure, right, when it's still colonized.
Yeah, that postnasal drip going down.
Exactly. Yeah, we see that postnasal drip a lot. And you can be completely out of mold and you took it with you. So then it's a matter of doing the sinus protocol.
Okay. Again, there's a lot of specific questions, guys, so we're answering them the best we can, generally speaking. Mold, MCAS, Lyme, Bartonella. Hard to know which symptoms belong to each diagnosis. Again, how we began in the beginning, you don't really need to always know exactly which symptom is attached to a diagnosis, but finding the root cause of how, again, that mold piece. Have you tried detoxing mold? You're trying it. Specific antifungal colonization sinus test for retesting.
So yeah, we talked about this last week, but there is no test. Just because think about this, your sinuses are really deep in there. There's no way to reach in there to test. So there really is no test. It's more symptoms, things kind of not going away, that kind of thing. But we always, have everybody kind of do some of that silver. So, and I'm talking about nanoparticle silver, not colloidal silver. You want a nanoparticle because it's a smaller particle. It's not going to build up in your body like a liposomal or a colloidal might do.
Yeah.
And I'll say that I came in IGeneX positive too. That was in dealing with the mold piece, that Lyme piece went away. I got my immune system back because that mold really is that block. I like to say the mold is kind of like creating swamp water, and you kind of can't clean up that swamp till you get rid of that fungus, right? And get that out, that mold out of there.
Okay. So Annette is saying, MCAS after COVID infection, how do you heal the root cause of that? So often what we are finding clinically, this is like in clinic, people who have the long haulers often have the mold piece as well. So it's like the viral load is here, but what's underlying, what caused you to have that viral load caused such an effect that led to then MCAS, like that high sensitivity level. So, you know, peeling back the layers of the onion to find out what's going on underneath.
Yeah, we often see it as mast cell might have been there, but you didn't really notice it. It's like the tip of the iceberg, right? And it's like that one event that happens that opens our eyes to like, oh, and then looking underneath, oh, there is there.
Yeah, we all have that one event.
Yeah, that makes us right. Look further. Like, oh my gosh, this is not normal, right? This is a crazy thing that's happening to me. Let's look deeper. So, and yeah, for many people that is COVID, and we have seen that. I will tell you, we do have a lot of people in clinic that have had that, where COVID is what kind of opened their eyes to the mast cell, and underneath there was the mold.
Yeah. Right. Wendy's
again, yeah, that mold keeps us from the immune being able to clear things. It's so busy dealing with the mold or, you know, everything else that it's not able to clear those infections it should be clearing.
Wendy's asking, how can we heal skin to use skincare products again?
So that's depends on what's going on, right? There. I'll tell you, my skin's healed. I was, you know, the hive poster girl, covered in hives. So I'm able to use, you know, non-toxic kinds of things is what I use. So it depends on what's going on. I'm wondering if sometimes we have people who are reacting to things all the time on the skin. Sometimes can be a salicylate issue. So that might be worth looking at, see if you have maybe some salicylate intolerance, which we sometimes see in relation to mast cell and mold.
Yeah.
And I know we have articles on that for sure, to look at that, because salicylates is one of the ones that is absorbed through the skin. So we sometimes do have clients, quite a few clients, who can't do anything with any herbal ingredients. So it might be non-toxic, but the herbal ingredients have salicylates in them, and that's kind of adding to it.
Okay. All right. I'm thinking caffeine is a big no for MCAS. Please confirm. It's a huge trigger. You're thinking it's a huge trigger for you individually, probably because you know your body better than anyone else. So identifying those triggers is going to be really important.
So yeah, paying attention to that. I mean, sometimes what I see for that is that somebody says, hey, I'm reacting to coffee, and it's not the caffeine. And what's happening is coffee is a very moldy crop, one of the most moldy crops, and we're drinking it every day. So I think it's important to find a mycotoxin-free coffee that's third-party tested. We do recommend Purity coffee, actually coffee that's designed for health. It's third-party tested for mycotoxins. And a lot of clients who think they can't have coffee do really well with Purity coffee. So that's one thing I would recommend. But could you have a caffeine sensitivity that's kind of driving the, you know, your nervous system and your immune system? Absolutely. Some people, you know, are fast metabolizers or even slow metabolizers of caffeine, and it kind of drives things for them. So might be worth switching to see, or maybe limiting, right? Trying 1 cup instead of 2 or 3, which might have been a habit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I saw somebody asking about mold colonization testing.
Yeah, I'm pulling that one up now.
Yeah. So how do you test to see if someone has mold colonization? So my favorite test for that is an organic acids test, because the first 9 markers in it, at least the mosaic one, looks at it's 9 fungal markers. So it kind of gives us a bit of information about what's going on. We do typically see some markers off there. There's also bacterial markers So that's a good one to see, but it's also combined with symptoms and how you're doing on the other side of detox.
Okay. Any MCAS support supplements that help with boosting energy? I know we're all tired, aren't we? We all feel a little tired.
So yeah, that fatigue. Yeah. And I feel you, because I was labeled chronic fatigue before when I was living in black mold, right? So it is looking at that environment, making sure you're looking at the mold, because the mold piece, especially like trichothecenes from black mold, will affect your mitochondria, which will make you really, really tired. So look at that. Make sure you don't miss that. How do you boost that energy? So it depends on what's going on, right? It would be working with a practitioner to see, is that because your adrenals, you need some adrenal support, or do you need some detox support and you feel better with a little bit of detox on board? So it kind of depends on what's going on, and really troubleshooting that energy and fatigue piece.
And not not trying to detox too fast. Like, I know if I try to detox too fast, fatigue is one of the first symptoms for me to show up. Because your body's just using all that energy to keep you safe. And so it's like trying to shuttle it out, or trying to get it where it's not going to be in circulation. So I definitely dealt with that fatigue as well. So yeah, as far as what Kimberly was saying, it's going to be highly individual as far as why are you experiencing the fatigue.
Yeah. And then it's very much to tie on to what you were saying, finding your sweet spot, and that sweet spot can change. So it's like kind of like surfing a little bit, because you want some, but you don't want too much.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to overwhelm that detox system. So it's like finding what your sweet spot is and kind of sticking with that and listening to your body for where that is in your body. And it's going to be for everybody. Yeah.
I was just going to say too, also like bringing in, Hannah, if you're menstruating, like where are you in your cycle? Your energy levels fluctuate at certain times of the month. Like when histamine is higher, when estrogen is higher, you just may need to eat lower histamine then, or up your histamine supporting supplements that you personally tolerate, right? We can't tell you which ones you tolerate personally, but can you up those during the times of your month that estrogen may be higher and causing some of those other symptoms as well? Okay. Marilyn is asking, is it possible to heal in a high humidity, polluted area like Dallas? Was considering moving to the desert. Single senior, have been advised to stay close to family. Yeah, of course. We need that support system. Yeah. That nervous system, right. Being afraid or being away from family could also be a nervous system trigger.
Right. So there's so much you can do for your air quality, right? I'm assuming you would have HVAC being there, right? So then sort of doing a lot of air filtration, like with an air doctor, or some of the other air filtration things, like HypoAir is another one that can kind of clean up that air quality if you have, and then dehumidifiers and things like that. So really maintaining your internal environment, you can do that, and then being very aware of what is it like outside. If it's a high heat polluted day, obviously not spending a lot of time outside.
Yeah, and don't open your windows that day. Like, keep the humidity level in your house between that 40 and 50%.
And I will say, we have clients who live in the desert because, rain happens there too, especially with like climate change, right? But also indoor plumbing, we all have it. So it can happen in any house, anywhere. So yeah, know that just because you're in the desert doesn't mean you're safe from mold, right?
Okay. Oh my goodness, so many questions coming in. Annette, how do I detox mold? Great question.
Big question. So you want to be stabilized, right? Because we're talking about mast cells. So you want to be stabilized first, because it is a little bit of a challenge on the body. So I talk to clients about it, saying we're kind of trying to put the training wheels on the bike. So when we do add on a binder, we're not flipping the bike over, right? So we're trying to, so that's what we're doing in stabilization. So how do you detox the mold? I mean, in a nutshell, it's a combination of binders that are targeted to what you've been exposed to, all kinds of supports for your detox system, sweating, lymphatic movement, that kinds of things. And then that that antifungal piece if that's an issue for you. So making sure you're not bringing it with you afterwards, in a nutshell. But there's a lot under there. I mean, we have a whole course on detoxing mold alone.
Yeah. Okay. Kimberly, do you want to answer one more?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Julie is asking, can you talk a little bit about the relationship between gallbladder dysfunction symptoms and histamine intolerance in MCAS? I feel like we see this kind of come up a lot because of gallbladder removal before actually addressing why is the gallbladder causing issues.
Yeah. So the gallbladder, right, is where we store bile, right? That's made in the liver. And what do we use bile for? So we use it for two things. People always think of it as using it for digesting fats, which is a huge piece of it. But the second piece is for detoxing toxins, like mycotoxins from mold. So a lot of people don't realize they have been exposed to mold. Their body has been detoxing it, making their bile pretty sludgy. And that's when we start to get the stones and all the kinds of things that go along with it. So yeah, if we don't have good digestion and detox pathways going on, because things are kind of clogged up in the liver, in the gallbladder, in the kidneys, or motility with detoxing things, that all can contribute to histamine intolerance, right? Because things are kind of sitting around, stagnating, not moving through, things aren't functioning well. So yeah, we do see gallbladder dysfunction quite a bit.
Okay, the mail just came and my dogs are trying to come in the house.
I guess the other thing I'd say there, like, so if your gallbladder's not functioning well and you don't have a lot of bile, we're not digesting well, and then if the food isn't moving through well, the food's sitting there, which if you have some dysbiosis is feeding that dysbiosis, and then we just have, a lot of histamine, right? Building up from all that bacteria and things not moving through. So yeah. It's a big piece of the puzzle.
Wendy's saying, thank you guys for taking the time to help everyone. Yeah, Wendy, thanks for being here. We appreciate this community so much.
Great questions today too.
Yeah. All right. So just to finish it off, a lot of people don't know that we mentioned it earlier, but we actually are a remote health consulting clinic. So if you are kind of wondering how you get that more in-depth personalized approach to your healing, we do offer 2 tiers of support. So we have our foundational tier, which currently is offered through strategy sessions, and hopefully in the future we'll have different types of support that we can provide there. Maybe it looks like group coaching. We're playing around with some ideas to support as many people as possible, but right now our foundational tier is those strategy sessions. And we are also opening up our advanced clinic to our advanced route to our international community as well. We typically start them with a strategy session. So if you're not 100% sure if you're international, whether or not we can support you further on your journey, a strategy session is a great place to start. So we can do that evaluation together and give you those personalized next steps and to take on your healing journey. And then we also offer that emotional support. So what Kimberly was mentioning around the nervous system piece and unresolved traumas, and how do you kind of get those pieces healed as far as, what it means to move forward and not be so sensitive to those supplements, those foods. So that's an option as well for both clients and non-clients. So we have a lot of options. You can kind of learn about all of our practitioners, all of the things that we offer at mastcell360.com/application. And for those who tune in weekly, we will be back next week with Stephen Wright for some more gut health topics. Kimberly, do you have any parting words for our amazing audience today?
I was just seeing the question that came in and I was really wanting to answer it. So Amelia was asking, is POTS syndrome caused from having Mast Cell Activation Syndrome? So POTS is a neurosymptom and it can often be related to mast cell. And I will tell you, I had very severe POTS. I passed out within 3 minutes within that tilt table test. I don't have POTS anymore. So I do think it's a neuro symptom that can come up for many people for various reasons, but it is worth considering that as a symptom of mast cell. If you're looking at, do I have mast cell and I have POTS, there is a lot of overlap there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Yeah.